The house sat with a presence that felt too aware. Unlike other old homes with creaking pipes and drafty windows, this one exuded a consciousness. It didn't just stand still, it observed. Every corner seemed to hold eyes just out of reach, watching the occupant from behind walls that breathed in silence. When one walked through the halls, it felt less like exploring a home and more like stepping deeper into a thing that was awake. The sensation of being watched didn't begin gradually. It was immediate, heavy, and pressing. From the first step through the front door, the air shifted. It wasn't just quiet, it was expectant, as if the house had been waiting. Lights didn't just flicker randomly. They dimmed when backs were turned. The chill in the room wasn't from poor insulation. It rolled across the skin like breath. No matter where someone stood, it felt like something stood opposite, just behind them, in the reflection of the television when it was turned off. In the slight warping of the window glass. Even with closed curtains, it felt like something behind the curtain was still staring. Attempts to rationalize it faded quickly. There was no logical explanation for the pulse of fear that grew stronger with each passing hour inside rooms seemed to rearrange themselves subtly. Chairs slightly turned, picture frames shifted. The sensation wasn't that someone had been in the room, it was that something had never left. Even sleep brought no peace. The weight of being watched extended into dreams, faces half seen. Figures in corners that blurred when looked at directly. Each awakening was accompanied by sweat, a racing heart, and the unshakable certainty that someone had been hovering nearby. Technology was no help. Phones died without explanation. The camera app would glitch sometimes, catching frames of a figure just out of focus, standing at the edge of the hallway. No one else was in the house. No one else was supposed to be in the house. But every sense screamed otherwise. The feeling didn't fade over time. It sharpened, grew stronger. The more someone tried to ignore it, the more the house responded. Not with noise, not with violence, but with an overwhelming presence that pushed in from all directions. It wasn't just in the house. It was the house. The mirrors in the house were never quite still. They didn't reflect like they should. At first, it seemed like a trick of the light, maybe warped glass or bad angles, but the longer someone stared, the more wrong things began to appear. Reflections lagged just a little behind. Movements inside them were sometimes delayed by a split second, like the image was thinking before mimicking. Then came the inconsistencies, a blink that happened only in the mirror, a smile that lingered, just a little too long. A figure standing behind in the reflection when no one else was in the room. Turning around revealed nothing. But the moment eyes met the glass again, it was there just in the edge, disappearing like smoke. These weren't just mirrors, they acted like doorways. Sometimes they felt deeper than they should be, like staring into water instead of glass. There were moments when shadows drifted behind the reflected hallway that weren't present in reality. Sometimes light sources didn't match. The hallway light would be off, but in the mirror, it glowed dimly, flickering. The bathroom mirror became the worst offender. At night, its surface would fog over by itself, as though someone were breathing on it from the inside. Fingers would trace words across the condensation words that vanished before they could be read. Wiping the glass clean revealed nothing but the reflection of a room that felt like it was holding its breath. People began avoiding their own reflection, covering mirrors, turning them to face the wall, but it didn't help. Once noticed, the mirrors started appearing more frequently, on picture frames, behind screens. Even on windows after dark, the house used them as eyes. They weren't just showing what was real, they were showing what wanted to come through. The footsteps began faint, almost indistinguishable from the usual creaks of an aging house. At first, they were brushed off as the structure settling or the wind shifting through unseen cracks. but they grew more deliberate, more rhythmic. They moved with intention, always pacing, always near, yet never visible. They started in the hallway outside the bedroom late at night. Soft, slow steps across wooden floorboards, too precise to be random noise, too steady to be ignored. When the door opened, there was never anything there. Just the echo fading into silence, as if whatever was walking had paused the moment it was confronted. Then the pacing began inside the rooms, behind closed doors, inside closets, beneath floorboards. One could stand completely still and hear the measured steps circle around them from above, below, and behind. It was as if something unseen moved in tight loops, never leaving, always circling, like it was inspecting, measuring. Some nights, the footsteps would pause for hours, then suddenly start up again the moment someone began to relax, as if it waited for attention to drop, for awareness to dull. Then it would start heel, toe, slow and deliberate. The sound of bare feet on wood, sometimes wet, sometimes dragging slightly. It wasn't always alone. Occasionally, there were two sets. One fast and childlike, skittering just out of reach. The other heavier, slower, following deliberately after, like something was chasing or hurting. The two sets would stop at the same place, always at the foot of the footsteps never retreated. They never faded away toward an exit, they simply stopped. As if the one walking had settled into the room and decided to stay. What was terrifying wasn't just that something was walking around unseen, it was that it always knew exactly where the listener was. The forest surrounding the house wasn't like any normal stretch of trees. It had an unnatural stillness to it, as if the wind avoided passing through the branches. The trees grew tall and close together, their trunks too straight, too perfectly aligned, almost as if placed there deliberately. Birds were rarely seen, and when they were, they circled rather than landed. The deeper one walked into the woods, the more the silence thickened, swallowing footsteps, breaths, even thoughts. What made it worse was the way the forest seemed to shift. Landmarks disappeared. Trails that led away from the house curved back, without explanation. A distinct oak with a scarred trunk would appear again and again, no matter which direction one walked. Even with GPS or compass in hand, the results never made sense. Coordinates would spin. Screens would glitch, pointing always back to the center. Time felt strange under the canopy. A few minutes outside stretched into hours. The light dimmed, unnaturally fast. Twilight came early and stayed too long. The trees seemed to bend subtly, their branches lowering as if listening. Every now and then, there was movement in the distance, brief flashes of white or black darting between trunks, but when chased, they vanished completely. Some described the forest as protective of the house, not in a safe way, but as if it was guarding something it didn't want released. Every escape attempt led right back to the clearing. Even when people marked trees, laid stones, or dragged branches to track direction, the signs would vanish the next time they passed through. No one could explain how the forest always led them back, as if the paths themselves folded in on each other, hiding every way out. It wasn't a forest to explore, it was a boundary, and it never let go once entered. It watched constantly, not with the intention to harm, but with a quiet patience that felt worse than any immediate threat. The sensation wasn't sharp like fear of violence. It was slow, invasive, like something crawling beneath the skin. It observed from shadows, from behind doors left ajar, from beneath beds where no one dared to look twice. The presence never moved quickly. It didn't lunge, didn't growl, didn't scream. It simply remained, always there, always watching, waiting. There was no escape from its gaze. Closing eyes didn't help, it was still felt like a weight behind the eyelids. The feeling intensified in moments of stillness. Silence made it bolder. It came closest when breath was held, when someone tried hardest not to move, not to be noticed. That's when it leaned in. It wanted to be felt more than seen. It fed on discomfort, on the slow unraveling of nerves. Its presence was most obvious in the hours just before dawn, the time when the body is too tired to fight off sleep, and the mind too worn to question what it senses. Shadows in the corner would stretch unnaturally long. Outlines in the fabric of curtains would shift slightly, and sometimes something cold would press against the spine without making contact. It didn't speak, but the air seemed to thicken with intent. Thoughts became tangled. Simple tasks felt monitored. Even blinking felt unsafe, as if closing the eyes for even a second was a mistake. The awareness of being observed became a kind of madness. It made every room feel smaller, every breath feel stolen. Objects in the room began to face the bed. A chair turned slightly inward, a cracked closet door, even a coat hook twisted in the shape of a watching eye. It never left because it didn't need to move. Please like and subscribe. Fear. Frequency for more horror stories.